Tammy, I'm working at Seeking Integrity. I'll
Mm,
be at the treatment center 3 days this week. I'm
I,
so excited.
I know you will. Yes. And
I'm
I
looking forward to that.
honestly, I think I love that you are doing that. So, oh, okay. This one's a two-part. So keep them short, please. But I'm gonna read this.
Please.
So the next one, yeah. Um, Thanks for the service. Welcoming a recovering male porn addict, 28 years young, and my boyfriend of 2 years. And I have some challenges. I have been um, mentally writing off our relationship because of what I experienced as incongruities. He's glass half empty. I'm half opposites.
Oops.
Okay. I notice our difference is to push him. Okay. Okay. Hope there's three here. We both have mental health conditions. I'm in therapy, group therapy, and go to 12 step. He recently started talk therapy, yay, but he is an insomniac, so it makes him hard to deal with in the morning. And because he doesn't have a lot of resources, dating him at times feels like a therapy session. He lost his job of 5 years earlier this year and was already fragile before that happened. So he is constant emotional turmoil, always on the verge of tears and regularly fighting. Suicidal ideation, that's highly problematic. That combined with our incongruities causes me to resent him. And instead of saying, you're too much for me, I punish him by being passive aggressive. I try to coach myself into staying because he is good where it counts. But lately it's been hard for me to hold space for all that comes with us being together. I've been trying to discern whether it's my intimacy avoidance that pushes him away, or if I'm really just don't want to be with him anymore. Any thoughts? Sorry, so long. Okay.
Do we know how
So,
long they've been together? 28 years young.
um,
Oh, 2 years.
yes, 2 years.
2 years.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting question, Tammy. I'm glad we're actually
Yeah.
talking about a relationship and not just sexual acting out. Not
Yes.
that we're not glad to
Yeah.
talk about that. So there's a couple of ways to look at this. One of the things that came to mind is something a therapist once said to me. I had broken up with someone years and years and years ago. And of course, I was in that stage of, oh, why did I do that? And was it the right thing? And maybe we were right for each other and all that crazy stuff, which is understandable when you get lonely. And I went to my therapist, who I'd been complaining who been complaining about the relationship to for a while. And I said to my therapist, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe we should be together. Maybe. And he said this to me, I never forgot. He said, you are who you are, and they are who they are together. You are who you are together. There are things that can be improved. You can improve communication. You can improve moods. You can improve circumstances. You can improve who gives more and who gives less, all of the dynamics of a relationship, how we fight, what kind of sex we have. I mean, that's all negotiable. And if someone has challenges in those areas, they can go to therapy, they can work on it, whatever that is. But who you are is who you are. And we get along or we don't. We're attracted to someone or we aren't. That's just kind of how it goes. So if, only you can determine if the issues that you're talking about are circumstantial and have to do with the job issue and him just starting therapy and, or whether this is fundamentally not a good match. Now, 2 years is a while, but 2 years is also when some of the magic starts to wear off. 2 years in a relationship, I can be good. Around 2 years, and this may have nothing to do with intimacy, it's just human nature. I start to really see who that is. And then I start to pick on them. Oh, well, I've been with them 2 years and now they're like this and they're like that. And you sort of start to see the stuff you didn't see before. Or worse, all the stuff you loved before, now you hate them for it. So again, I can't tell you what's right and what's wrong. I will say this, Tammy, you love this, but when this person wrote, a recovering addict, me,
Mhm.
having some challenges in relationship, everybody does. Mentally writing off a relationship, I think I do that every day on some level. Okay, now to my relationship. My husband's half full and I'm half empty. Tammy, tell you for sure I'm half empty. What else does it say? I'm not a morning person. My husband gets up at 6:30 in the morning every day. Drives me insane. I don't go to bed till midnight. That's how we are. I love mornings. I hate mornings. Tammy knows this. I just don't want to talk
I
before 9
don't
a.m.
schedule. I don't even. Yeah, right. It's
Thank you,
not
but I'll
worth
work
it.
till midnight.
Yes,
And even
and
though
I'm
we do
asleep
fun
by
things
then. So
together,
yeah.
so here's the fundamental stuff. I love this. Even though we do fun things together, and he is loyal, faithful, thoughtful, loving, and demonstrate it. I notice that I use our differences to push him, ice him away. So that to me is more important than, I just want to say, like, my husband's a morning person, I'm an evening person. We both go to therapy, we're both on meds, we both have terrible childhoods, we both have trauma. these are not that unusual for people like us who are challenged. The question is, if you are using your differences to push him away, that does feel a little bit like an intimacy issue. Because when I start to say, as I said, well, I don't like this and I don't like that, and we've had 2 years of pretty good time, something's going on with me, or it may be something going on with them in combination. Like maybe he lost his job, I'm making this up, and you starting to feel like your partner's too dependent. So you start pushing them away because they're depending on you financially, or they're home all day and you get home and it's just that's their whole day, or that's a dependency issue that may have shifted when he lost his job, but that doesn't mean that's who he is. So circumstances and how we act in certain circumstances, or our abilities to communicate and get along, are very different things than fundamentally, are you the kind of person I want to be with? And I got to say, I would want to be with someone who's loyal, faithful, thoughtful, loving, and demonstrates it. That's not typical for a lot of the relationships, sadly, that we end up in. So, well, at least us addicts. So, Tammy, what are your thoughts? I like this relationship.
Yeah, I think there was a lot. I love what you were sharing. So, but I was thinking, because you're doing therapy in 12 steps, what a great opportunity for you to look at, because you can't take his inventory, but man, you sure can take a look at, the things about you. And, I've shared this before, the serenity prayer is, I have control over my actions and reactions. I have no control over anybody else. And my level of serenity is directly impacted by my desire to, work on everyone else. So I would encourage you to look at, are there things that you can do? Can you communicate in a meaningful way? Not to be confronted, but just like, okay, this is a sticking point for us. So how do we get through this? Or this is my expectations. A lot of it is, the communication, and Dr. Rob talked about, those are things you can work on and you can grow together in. So no one's perfect. If you're looking for the perfect partner that's never going to drive you nuts, they're not there, so they're not.
Well, you've often heard me say, and I just want to build on what Tammy just said. If I can find someone, and look, I've done a lot of things in my time. I've been with lots of people, both romantically and sexually. What I know is this: to find someone you get along with, who you enjoy, who is a reasonable human being, who you can spend days and days and days together, not to mention weeks and nights, and that is rare. It's one of the reasons why I encourage a lot of folks to stay in their relationships. Is it's brutal out there. And I mean that. I mean, not only the process of finding someone, but I remember hearing once, and I always thought this, that dating is a numbers game. You can't date 3 people and find the right person. You got to date 15 people to find the right person, or more. And so there is another side of this coin, which is, what is the alternative? Do you want to toss? I saw this, by the way, I have to go back to it. 28 years young, more than 28 years older. You're 28. That's about the time that people, is that right, Johnny? 28? That's about the time that people settle down. A lot of folks, 28, 30, they look for a long-term relationship. That's sort of developmentally where we are. I don't know how many people you've dated, how much experience you've had. The one more thing I want to say, we should move on, is couples therapy. I would not want to end my relationship or be certain if I'm going to move to marriage or whatever in this situation, without sitting with a couples therapist for, a couple of months. And saying, and by the way, you can do couples every other week. You don't have to do it every week, but just really figuring out what it is you want, what it is you need, and whether this person can give it to you or not, and vice versa. You may be having a hard time. People have that. If you've been dating for 5 years or gotten married and you ask this question, you would know that this hard time is going to pass, that it's just a blip in a long, but 2 years, you may not have seen this before. So lots of unanswered questions, but good for you for being in a 2-year relationship. The kudos to you, especially for porn addicts who tend to isolate and not build relationships. So great stuff. Glad you're asking the right questions. More information needed in your own life to figure this out.
Okay. Next question. My husband, this person writes, just started treatment with us. Married 20 years, supposed to write an impact letter. Don't want to increase his shame. Just starting his residential treatment. It's hard to believe. This is really the question. It's hard to believe a man that claims to love me could have done everything I'm exploring for the impact letter. Please explain compartmentalizing. If he really does not love me, or does, how would I know? He lies about nearly everything to work to his advantage. That's called addiction. You know, our clinical director runs around and says, tell the truth and tell it faster. And it's about everything. It isn't just about the sexual acting out. It's problematic. We lie to ourselves and everyone else. So, but Dr. Rob, what are your thoughts
Hold on
on
a
this?
second. Okay, so I went ahead. Sorry about that.
It's in the open.
Okay, no, I got it. So a couple of things. What I wrote down was 7-year-old. So you have to understand that addicts are like 7-year-olds. You know, we took the cookie out of the jar, we lied that we took it. You see a trail of crumbs from the kitchen, we say, I don't know where those came from, mommy. You know, we look to be dependent on others in ways that we're not independent. So a lot of what you're seeing, that's the kind of childlike behavior, the lies, the secrets, think of a child, because that's a part, and yes, that's compartmentalized. In the world, we look like, you know, we are pretty much getting along, doing our thing, but emotionally, which you can separate from intellectual, we're not so old and we're not so good. And the hardest good at doing this, and the hardest part, because you may say, oh, well, he gets along well with people at work, or, you know, he gets along well with our friends. The hardest part is going to be with you, because you're the one who scares us the most. You're the one who can threaten us the most. You're the one who can bring up all the trauma that we have from the past, because you're the most important person to us. So guess who we're going to lie to the most? Guess who we're going to keep the most secrets from is the person that we're actually afraid could hurt us, let us down, and leave. Now, the question comes up always, how could you love me and do this to me? And that is compartmentalization. That is being an addict. Take the sex out. I know this is so hard for you spouses. And say someone is a severe heroin addict or an alcoholic. They're just making a mess all over the place, and they're not home. They're driving drunk with the kids. And, you know, and you might say, how can he or she love me and drink like that? How can they love me and still use drugs? If they knew how much important the family was and I was, they would stop all that. Well, they're not going to stop all of it, because the most important relationship they have is not with you, it's with their addiction. And so, you know, you come in second. And that's the case when we're addicts. You're asking to come in first, as you should, but that transition takes a while. So back to your question, write what happened to you. So let me say this, sorry. I read impact letters, and well, let me back up and say what they are. I'm very verbal today.
It's
An
all
impact
good.
letter is when we are in treatment, when I am working with someone and seeking integrity, their spouses, if they have one, we ask them to send a letter. And that is an impact letter. And what it is, it's a page or two, hopefully double spaced, not 12 pages single spaced, but it's a letter describing what your life has been with this person who's in treatment and how you and your family have been impacted. So I often read, you know, you yell at me when I want to be heard. You disappear when we're trying to be close to each other. I feel like you're this. I feel like you're that. I hear this. You do this in front of the kids. And you know, what I hear a lot from the guys, because we run a male treatment center, is, well, I've heard all of that before. And my first set question is, well, why didn't you listen? That's one of my first things. But the second thing is, but when I hear it here, when I hear it in front of this group of men and you are reading it, it's completely a revelation to me. And I hear this all the time, I never really got, did I really hurt my children? Did I really scare my spouse? We don't get it, because what we're doing is defending the addiction. And so we're lying, we're cheating, whatever we're doing, so that you don't push us off the dime of the thing we most want to do, which is act out. But in treatment, we're trying to not act out. And part of helping us not act out is for us to squarely and fully look at our consequences. And when you send that letter and you say, whatever happened to you and your family, and that you were a loving person and you've been turned into someone you never expected to be, and all that stuff, that is powerful, good information for us in treatment. And let me say one more thing about shame. Shame is, so Brene Brown will not like this, but as far as I'm concerned with addicts, shame is selfish. It's a way to distract myself from what's important. So let's say I read an impact letter in treatment, your impact letter, and I say to the client, how do you feel right now? And they say, oh my God, I'm so ashamed. I feel so terrible about everything that's happened. Okay, what does that mean? What do you feel bad about? So I'm pursuing someone after reading the impact letter. And they say things to me like, well, I can't believe I turned out to be this person. And I just hate myself for this. And I never wanted to be that. And of course, that's all about them. I'm waiting for them to say, I can't imagine what my wife has gone through. I can't imagine what my lover, my friends, my family. That is empathy. When I turn on myself, as a therapist said to me once, there's no there. I can go round and round. They call it a shame spiral. I can go round and round and down, but nobody's in there but me. I have to, one of the best ways to move out of shame is to think about someone else and what they're going through. It's one of the reasons we do service in the 12-step program. So I would not be ashamed, nor should you, I would not be concerned, nor should you be, about what you write. You write anything that you need to write. This is your voice in treatment. There'll be others, you have family sessions and all that, but this is how we can literally bring you into the room and say to your spouse, is this who you meant to be? Because this is how your family experiences you. So don't worry about the shame, because hopefully we're going to turn that into an opportunity for them to understand what you're going through and not what they've been through. And you need to have a voice. You need to say what you need to say. And we don't edit. By the way, most of the gents I work with end up in tears, because everyone is looking at them like, wow, you did that, and you say you love your family, and wow, you are really troubled. And they get how troubled they are. So don't hold back. Say what you need to say. Compartmentalizing is what we do to protect our addiction. And it sounds like all of this is right on track. By the way, thank you for coming to Seeking Integrity. I think that for the most part, we change lives. So if someone is willing, we can change lives. And I know that for a fact. So Tammy,
I do
thoughts about
too.
this?
Well, the only thing I want to add, because that was very helpful, but the only thing I want to add is we don't leave those guys, just in their shame and oh, you're so broken. So like the rest of the story is, there's a community of guys that are able to support them. The therapists are there. I use the term safely cocooned. The guys are safely cocooned with us so that they can tolerate hearing that and really hear it and get the support to be able to start owning, that behavior. So you're hearing snippets. Don't think that it's this or that. It's like, it's a whole process with expert clinicians. There's no other treatment program in the world that has the level of clinical expertise that we
has
do.
me.
And doctor, I mean, like, you look at the entire team, it's everybody, and it's all part of
It is the whole team.
it's all part of it. And it's intentional. Dr. Rob created it and obviously is there, working directly with the clients, but it really is the whole process, because these guys, it's not just they've been doing this acting out for a couple of years. It's problems and issues that were problems for them, when they were a young kid. And so they've found maladaptive coping mechanisms that it served them in many ways until it didn't. Now it's really driving the wedge between you and him, and it's also hurting him and you, and it's the whole mess. So having the clinicians be able to, it's not just stopping the behavior. People go to alcohol and drug rehab all the time. Stop the behavior and you're in recovery. This is looking holistically at all of the issues so that they have a plan, not just to stop this problematic behavior, but not just switch automatically to another one as well. So we're grateful but it's day one. So, trust the process. This is not, this is
well, the first few days
so.
is get me out of here. I don't belong here.
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong place. They can't help me. That's their fear and their anxiety.
Yeah.
One more
absolutely.
thing about what Tammy said, which is you have to understand, after those letters are read, other men raise their hand and say, wow, I was here last week and my letter was read and I know exactly how you're feeling, but I'm not feeling that way anymore because I have worked on it. I've thought about it. So there is another side to this.
Mm-hmm.
The first response will be, I hate myself, I'm terrible. But we are, as Tammy said, all over that and cocooning and supporting and also challenging. It is crappy behavior. You are responsible for that. But everyone gets you're not a bad person. You're a broken person.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, when you send people to our treatment center, by the time they get to us, they're pretty broken. So give us some time. And don't take too much that they say seriously, because they're all over the place, right now, anyway, in the beginning.
Okay. Next question. Hi, Dr. Rob. My husband exclaimed, because you are not my type when discussing his sexual interests. I am not his type physically. As a wife, why would his issues regarding porn addiction and his type be actually related in real life concepts like marriage? Why, as a wife, should I stick around even though he claims he loves me, but I am not his type?
You want to start that one, Tammy?
Well, I find that to be so cruel, but I also find it to be justification for, well, I love you, but this porn stuff is my
Right.
type. And so therefore I have the excuse, and I selfishly and immaturely get to go look at porn, because if you were just my type, it would be fine. And
It's your
you
fault.
were never be his type. I mean, no human being can live up to what porn is. So no mere mortal
Yeah.
can do that. So
Sorry, what am I
that
see here?
sounds like denial and justification and blame shifting and gaslighting and all of the but very cruel. So I'm hurt for you.
Well, I also want to add that what is it? We don't even know what our type. Let's say this. We are so used to approaching sexuality through intensity and the new experience and the person we don't know, or with the porn, it's just, paper doll after paper doll after paper doll. Those aren't real people. Those aren't real experiences, as you know. So nobody looks like that. Most of that is not real. I know some porn folks and some sex workers, they ain't real. Plus the way it's shot and the way it's filmed. So what I hear is someone who's in a lot of fantasy. I mean, like that real life people, I don't know about you, but I've been in marriage for a while and my body doesn't look the way it did 20 years ago. But I have someone who loves me and loves who I am now. And the fact that they hold the memory and experience of who we were together then and who we're together now. So yeah, I think this is a way to shove you away and say it's your fault, because if you were my type, I wouldn't be doing all of this. And I don't want to say those two FY words that aren't very nice, but this is a very mean thing to do. And I would say something like, I don't want to hear any of this. You can take that somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think I would encourage you, healthy boundaries for you. We have a betrayed partner work group starting again on Wednesday, 6 weeks with other betrayed partners. Angela Spearman leads it from a codependent lens. So there's no blaming. We don't blame you. It's we are not looking to blame or shame or tell you you're an enabler or part of the problem. It's, as Dr. Rob said in the previous answer, it's brokenness on his part, but you working on your safety, I would strongly encourage. So, okay, I've been in a relationship with my SA for 15 years and have been a betrayed partner for several years. My SA went to the movies by himself yesterday at 5:45 show and didn't get back home until 9:45 p.m. The last I knew, the movies only last about 2 hours. He tells me he went for a drive to clear his head. Today, I asked him to show me his bank transaction from yesterday to reassure me he was being honest. He refuses to show me his transaction. I learned to never ignore my intuition. Am I wrong to think I got the answer when he won't reassure me by showing me his bank transaction from yesterday? We have separate bank accounts. I call BS. I agree. Yeah,
And what did
Dr.
Rob
Rob
put in
wrote,
the
liar,
chat?
liar, pants on fire. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that
No, I
this
agree.
person is, he's acting out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it's one thing to do it and not own it, but I mean, it's so obvious. Like, this is someone who's gotten so far into their addiction that they're not even doing a good job of lying anymore. And that's sort of a point where you got to say, wow, they are desperate.
Yeah.
He knows what you think and what you believe. He is so out of control that he thinks somehow he can, not just pull wool over your eyes. I mean, this is like, I don't know, transparent, like a piece of glass he's trying to pull over your eyes. It's not going to go anywhere. So this is a treat. I don't hear anything, as Tammy would say. I don't hear anything about recovery, healing, therapists, how you're managing this, support groups, 12-step. How are you getting the support to have not just the insight, but the strength to feel more feel like there's ability to confront or challenge or take better care of yourself, because nobody deserves this kind of lying. And what are you going to do? Stand there and say, how long can you do that before you just end up being mad at yourself? So Tammy?
Yeah. It's one of those where I am very conflicted, because I'm going like, why does he get to have his bank account? You having your own separate bank account, you earned the right, but why are you not on his account? Like there doesn't seem to be anything put into place to provide you any level of trust. So I hear you when you say you've been a betrayed partner for several years. It may be even longer than that. I mean, who knows? I don't hear any recovery work in this. I haven't heard other than, maybe he is telling you he stopped, which of course is not, it's worthless. So trust your intuition, absolutely. And I think you need to, what is your healthy boundary around if you aren't able to show me your transaction, what does that mean? What are the, what is the, for your safety, financially, physically? I mean, who knows what he was doing? So what do you need to do for you?
I just
Okay.
want to add, I hope that you're not having
Yeah.
sex,
Yes.
because if you're having sex and it's not protected, who knows where he is or what he's doing. I think that's really important. They also have GPS trackers on our phones. And I say to the spouses, if you don't trust your spouse, track them. That's not codependent. That's finding out if you're safe or not. I don't believe in
Mhm.
codependency. I believe you track us to see, are you okay? Are we okay? So tell them, I absolutely believe you. I understand what you did, but I'd like to track you now so I can feel better and see how that one goes over, because someone who doesn't have anything to hide has no reason why you couldn't see or hear anywhere they went. So
So the next one, my wife has asked me for a detailed account of my last relapse 2 years ago with pornography and Netflix. I tried to do this, but she wants to know exactly what I watched and when. I can't remember. I really can't. And I don't want to make stuff up. I can't even remember accurately if I viewed pornography or sexually explicit programs the first day she left for the week. I've told her I viewed both that week, but that's not enough for her. She needs to know exactly when and what. How can I remember better?
Tammy?
Oh, to me, it's the wrong question, because you won't remember better. This was 2 years ago in in a um, in a formal therapeutic disclosure. It isn't all the gory details. I mean, I, so to me, the question is, what is it that she feels that she does 2 years ago? Like there's a big
Right.
disconnect. And I don't know what exactly it is, but she's very focused on 2 years ago. That to me is not like, are you doing recovery work? What are you doing to show that you're different? If you aren't showing that you're different, she could very well get stuck on the 2 years ago. But if are you going to 12 step? Do you have I mean, it's all the stuff. Do you have a sponsor? Have you done the 12 steps? 2 years? Have you done our sex addiction 101 or porn addiction 101 work group, out of the doghouse for men who've been caught cheating? I mean, there's so many
Doghouse.
resources. Yeah, doghouse would be good. If you have, if you have done the work and you have a 3-circle plan and you have all of the support in place so that you make sure there isn't another relapse. But a formal therapeutic disclosure doesn't go into all the gory details. I mean, like it's a couple of pages and it's succinct. It's not going through all of that. So I'm kind of wondering, A, what's going on for you in the recovery, and B, I am concerned that she has not gotten support to move forward. But if you're not doing A, then she's not going to feel that there's a space for the trust. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and who knows what, but we were talking about, if you get stuck in those patterns, then the relationship gets stuck too. So you're not moving forward if you're always looking in the rearview mirror at 2 years ago, at that incident, and then you're both stuck, and it's so injurious to both of you, to not have a pathway. It's not easy, but there is a pathway forward. So, Dr. Rob, what are your thoughts?
Well, I certainly want to ditto you, Tammy. I mean, I'm curious what triggered this. Has this been going on for 2 years, or is it just in the
Oh, that's
last
a good
six
point. Yeah,
weeks
yeah.
that this has been brought up? And if it is more recently, what triggered it? Was it you being home watching TV, or is it something that made her think back to that? Um,
Or she's going
you know,
away. That's because it was she
or
went
she's
away for a week,
going
so maybe
away.
she's getting. Yeah, that I hadn't thought of that too. Yeah,
By
yeah.
the way, to say something about that, one of our greatest triggers is unstructured time alone. And also when someone we love and are close to goes away. We have huge abandonment issues and we don't know it. We just think, oh, I can't, in active addiction, I can't wait till they're gone so I can go act out. But what's underneath that is I don't really want to be alone and I don't really want them to go. And I'm a little, but we don't recognize those feelings. We're so on to the addiction already. But I agree with something else that Tammy said, which is, well, actually, this is a little different, but spouses want to know everything. I understand this. It's actually kind of a false idea that if you, and I hear this all the time, I just want to know this. This is the last thing that I want to know. I need, and then an hour later, but what about this? And what about that? Or 2 days later, it never ends, because you're not really asking questions to get an answer. I mean, you may be, but the real big question is, can I trust you? You know, I want to know every single thing. By the way, spouses do not ask us everything and go after everything and search through everything because they want to leave us. They go through all of this because they are looking for a reason to be able to stay. And this is someone who's saying to you, I don't feel safe. I want to feel safe. Can you make me feel safe? The only issue is that she thinks that the way to feel safe is to get an answer to this particular question. By the way, what I didn't hear, and I think this is important, is if she does go out of town again, what have you set up for yourself? Does she feel safe that you're going to 3 meetings, that you're going to call your sponsor, that you're going to, you know, what are you doing during while she's away, if she's going away again, that, you know, is she able to track you? I'm not saying you track someone for years, but what can make her, and ask her, what would make you feel safe? I can't answer this question anymore. There is one more thing, and it is directly related to Out of the Doghouse. You know, this book I wrote about healing a broken relationship with a woman when you've cheated on her. You may not know how to effectively express what you want to say to her. And it may come off as defensive. It may come off as, you know, just leave me alone. I mean, who knows? So there are ways to learn how to better communicate your regret, your wanting to move forward, you know, all of that stuff. And you can learn that. That's why we teach courses in it, and why I wrote a book about it, because most men that I've worked with don't really understand the pain a woman goes through when she's cheated on, and very few of them know what to do with it, even if they do understand it. So it may well be that you have not found a way to clear all of this with her. So
he did
yeah, I
add
mean,
that it was the anniversary of the it was the anniversary. So but you know, I was also thinking, I don't think I would want, as an addict, to be focused on that acting out and trying to remember all the gory details. You know, like, to me, that would be problematic for my recovery, to have to go back and focus on all of that. I was thinking, you know, like, I think it would be absolutely worthwhile to, you know, say, I know that my previous behavior hurt her. Hurt you. I'm so sorry. I am working on being a better person. I can't retract that, but I want to move forward. And you know, giving her all the details, first of all, that you can't remember, but you know, doing that, it's just extra trauma for partners. I mean, unfortunately I end up dealing with this all the time, because you know, people are calling and they've gotten too much information, and now that is stuck in their heads. And so I have great concern that the more you share and the more she hears, that will be, you know, the tape playing through her mind as well. So, but
and this,
anyway.
Tammy, is exactly what the next question is about, by the way. I was taking a look.
Oh,
By the way, let me just
okay.
say, I put my podcast in there because there's a lot of information about
Yeah.
healing sexuality, healing intimacy, working on regaining trust. I mean, there's so many experts I've talked to there. People seem to really like it. So I do recommend it. Is a free resource. And we have tons of shows. Go ahead, Tammy.
Okay.
Why don't you read it?
Betrayed male with S.A. wife. I'm aware of the views about how the lies and deceit and betrayal trauma are the most hurtful and take the most to heal from. I've also heard a lot on how to heal from that. What I don't hear a lot about is what areas in self to focus on healing when specifically thinking about the purely physical aspects, i.e.
Right.
quantity and characteristics of physical acting out that cause shock and surprise. Yeah.
So it is related to the last question, and this is exactly what we don't want partners to know, is so much information. This is exactly the it of it. Like, I couldn't say this better, that at a certain point, if you see or hear too many details, you know, how big their what's was, or how many times they did what, or what motel, you know, what motel is fine, but the details of what kind of sex or what their body looks like, or we don't share that, no matter how many times we're asked, because we know. And we are trained to know, as therapists, as sex addiction therapists, that once you hear that, you will never get it out of your head. You will, every time you're sexual for a long time, you'll say, well, but they wanted this and I'm that, and they wanted this and I'm not that. And so really the answer to your question is stop asking questions. Try to focus on the positive piece. I hate to say that, which is the recovery. And also, I really think that there are sex therapists and forms of sex therapy that can help ease you back into intimacy or sexual intimacy. You don't start with penetrative sex. You start with holding hands. You start with looking in each other's eyes, and you go to hold hands and your partner says, no, that doesn't feel safe. Okay, maybe we start out by looking at each other. Okay, now we're holding hands. Does it feel okay for you to massage my shoulders? No. There's a whole process of regaining physical intimacy and trust. I think Tammy's mentioned it before. We call it sensate focus. We're taught it in the sex therapy world. There are things that you guys can do and learn about to recreate intimacy that might proceed by months before you're actually having penetrative sex. So I think slow down, stop asking questions, make your peace as you can with what happened, and then start new. Start holding and touching like you've never met before, and stop when it doesn't feel comfortable. And slowly but surely, you will work your way back to that. That's my best
And there
answer.
are some trauma modalities, because like if you're having a physical reaction, like and some people do, like they have a body, like they see a person that might represent that type, shall we say. So and there can be like so there are some modalities, and it doesn't take the trauma away. It just can lessen kind of the vibration within you. So people like EMDR, but somatic experience, embrace. There's different modalities, and there may be some merit in just working on getting that pain lessened. It's in your brain, unfortunately, so that's challenging, but there are some things that can help shift it. And like Dr. Rob said, it's shifting the focus of like, can you get their focus on this, or I can focus on a pathway moving forward. So,
and to both addicts to addicts in particular, when your spouse, this is the question before, when your spouse says, well, I know you did this and I want to know about this, and it doesn't matter when it's true or not. You don't need to clarify.
right.
What you need to say is, or hopefully that didn't happen, but I completely understand that you don't trust me because I've broken your heart and lied to you so many times. Don't try to make up like don't try this. Well, you don't understand. I haven't done that in years, or no, I'm not doing that anymore, or why do you keep reading into the things I'm doing? All of those things are perfectly valid for a partner. Your job is to say, I'm doing the best I can. I haven't acted out. You have every right to feel all those feelings. I have hurt you. I have let you down, and I wouldn't trust me either. That's what makes a partner feel better, that you understand what they're going through, not that you're trying to make it better.
And normally we don't pay much attention to the chat, but this person said it's more about the shock factor, that I didn't know my partner was capable of that. And that's true of all the partners. I mean, please hear me. Like, you are not alone. Every partner is, going, I can't believe this person that I trusted was capable of doing that. And like the previous one, do they really even love me? So unfortunately, that is part of the healing for betrayed partners.
But I do want to go back to, if you loved me, you wouldn't do that. It really, again, what you just said, I wanted to comment, it was in the chat, right? Where is it?
The shock factor.
I didn't know my partner. Well, go back to drugs and alcohol. I didn't know that my wife was capable of driving while drinking with our children. I thought they loved our children. I thought they loved, how could they possibly, don't they realize what could have happened? They'd say they love our kids, but how could they? It really is the same conundrum, which is, if you love me, how could you do this? Because I'm an addict and I can split parts of my life into pieces. That's what helps me with my addiction. So I don't think it's about love, but especially when you've been sexually and romantically betrayed, it is impossible to not say what's wrong with me, or what's wrong with us, or if you love me, and you have a right to all those feelings, and betrayal sucks, and alcohol is a betrayal, gambling is a betrayal, all of those things are a betrayal of love and connection. So you have to keep in mind, this is an addiction, and while it is impossible to take how personal it is out of your heart, they would have done this with any substance, any experience. It's just, this is the one they ended up on because of what happened to them when they were younger.
And many of them are doing other things too. That's why we're looking holistically.
Well, there's multi-addictions, right?
Yeah, there really is. So, Okay, the next question. I've been married over 30 years to my PA husband, who obviously has been acting out in secret for decades. Why does the addict bring someone else into this mess in the first place? Why wouldn't it be easier to do the addiction if you never had anyone to answer to? He is doing great in recovery, but why drag me into this BS?
Okay, so I have an answer for you that goes back to all the questions. We have a theme today, by the
Hmm.
way, Tammy. The theme is, can you love me and do these things too? And my answer is, he brought you into this because he loves you and he wants to be with you and he wants to work the relationship out. But he's so broken. He didn't bring you into this because of this. He didn't, I'm guessing, he didn't sadistically want to make your life miserable. My guess is he loves you, has always loved you, but is incredibly broken. You know, he could just leave you if he didn't want to. He could leave for an affair partner. He could lose for a porn star, leave for a porn. There are many, many. He could leave for the connections he's having online. Then he'd have more time to look at the porn. But the bottom line is that we're there because we love you, and we we don't know how to make it better, and we're so afraid of what will happen if we get revealed. So I think what this person did is they didn't just drag you into this BS, they dragged you into their life, and you wanted to be in their life. You weren't expecting this part, but it wasn't the reason they dragged you in your life. They dragged you in your life because obviously you're very important to them. They've stayed with you all these years. Besides, you share a lot of other things in acting out. I know it doesn't feel like that in the beginning, but you have family, you have friends, you have home, you have community, you have work. There's so many, you have vacations, you have a history. There are so many things that are reasons why you would be together and why you do care about each other. This is an anomaly. This is something that is a problem that needs to be dealt with, but it doesn't mean that you're not loved, valued, or appreciated, even though I know, again, if you love me, you wouldn't use the heroin. Well, why did you drag me into this problem with your heroin? Because I love you and I wanted to be with you, but I have this heroin problem. So anyway, thoughts, Tammy?
Well, and it is really challenging, and but I think what it feels like is the all or nothing. Like, I wish I hadn't spent any of the 30 years with this person because I
Right.
feel so hurt now. And I love what you were sharing of, like, if you can look at things and go, well, that was good and that was good, and it may be too early, to do that, but it isn't as black and white as as we'd like to make it, like, because then it would be really easy to leave, like, if he was a horrible person across all aspects, you wouldn't have been married to him for 30
Right.
years, but he isn't, and you aren't together. I mean, it's one of those, it's way more complex and complicated. But yes, there's some brokenness, but it's not, it's not shards of everything broken. There's some brokenness. And if he's on a recovery path, I mean, I hear this all the time of, people. In fact, I heard it from a therapist today, from a client, and I really appreciate when the alumni say that their lives were changed, that it was life changing to come. I care more when it's partners and spouses, and here's why. And this is what the therapist shared today, because that means that the guys that came to our treatment program did the work, and then they took it home, and they didn't just return to their old ways. They actually are using the tools that they are learning, leaning into the support that they have been given, so that they can show you too that they are in the process of changing. And it's a process, but there is help. There is, I think there's a lot of hope for lots of people. Not everybody. There are people that absolutely don't want it, but for those that do, you are on the journey with them, and I hope that there's a healing journey, so that the next 30 years, are, you have more joy and honesty in your relationship.
I'd like to flip this, Tammy, as we say in Hollywood, flip the script. And I'd like to read your question to you in a different way. I've been married, let me do this. I've been married for over 30 years to my PA husband, who has been acting out in secret for decades. Why did I stay in this mess? Wouldn't it be
Mm.
easier for me to just leave? He's doing great in recovery, but why do I stay? So if you flip it on you and take some of the focus off of him, it's not so much why did he bring you into this, but why are you staying? That brings up the question of, what do you care about? What has it meant to you? Why are you still there? Because you can say, why did this person bring this to me? But now that they have, the question isn't, why did they bring me all this? The question for you is, do I want to? And why have I remained here? And my guess is that's the answer to all the stuff that was positive and does work. And by the way, most of you spouses say, if this happened again, I would leave. You don't. Most of you say, I can't tolerate what's happened. I'm leaving. You don't. And the reason you don't is not because you're so broken, because you love this person. I wrote a book about this called Prodependence. It's about a whole new lens on what used to be called codependency, which is you're not playing out your problem by staying with them. You're playing into love and relationship. And that should be applauded, despite the difficulties and pain that it has cost you. So anyway, my question would be, why are you, in a very loving way, but why are you staying? You like
Yeah,
that one too.
yeah,
I could
yeah.
tell.
No, I do, and it's not, it's not pathologizing you. It's not like, why are you? It
Right.
it really is.
No,
But look at it as what, I bet you are a loving person that loves this person despite, those highly problematic behaviors. And so, yeah, I hear grief, and I get it. And grieving the loss of what you thought you had for 30 years, grieving the loss of the partner that you thought you had for 30 years. So, but doing the grieving work, there is a path forward, I promise.
hope is really important here. And by the way, Tammy and I, although we may sound like a little bit, are not saying, oh, don't worry about it. They're just an addict. They're doing what addicts do. They're
No.
completely accountable and responsible for their behavior.
Yes.
And both of you will suffer for a long time. But that doesn't mean that you want to throw away 30 years. It may be the right thing to do. I don't know. But it's not something I would necessarily do quickly or without a lot of thought. And maybe the worst thing is you might live apart for a while and see what that's like.
Yeah.
Let's keep
Well,
moving.
I want to add to that too, because I hear from people who have left the relationship or the person has left them, either way, and that doesn't take away all the pain. So I think sometimes a mistaken belief that, well, if I just leave him, then the problem is gone, and that can be with the addict too. But it isn't. It doesn't change the emotional. It doesn't change
The
the
heartbreak.
grief. And yeah, it really. So leaving is absolutely an option, but do it with thought and input from people who can give you good guidance, not just the answer that you want. So, okay, next question. I have been a lying addict for 35 years, and my spouse has
Sorry,
stuck with
I
me.
have stopped. I was trying to figure out what it had to do with the attic.
I know.
And I thought, well, maybe
I
they put their lies in the attic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
I
just didn't understand.
Fortunately, I caught it as I was reading it, because I
Good
was
job,
thinking
Tammy.
addict too. I was lying in the attic, and I was like, no, it's a lying addict. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for writing. We're not making fun of you. I've been a lying addict for 35 years, and my spouse has stuck with me. After alcoholism and 5 years of sobriety, my addiction morphed into online women, where I got caught in several money scams, ultimately losing lots of money. My spouse has stuck with me all this time. I'm completely willing to turn my life over, and I know I really need to revisit steps 4 and 5. Truth is, I did not even recognize how good a liar I was. The shame of the last breach is overwhelming now.
So is there a question?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. To me, it's like, so here's what I read. I was like, okay, I read money issues, alcohol issues, sex issues. This is, I love 12 steps. Please hear me clearly on this. I love 12 steps. That would not be, you have lots going on, and you have, I'm happy your wife is sticking by you. That's amazing for her. I hope she's getting support. Just doing another 4th and 5th step isn't going to be enough. I would invite you. To me, this is like, come to our treatment program. We can help you with the underlying issues too. But at least, we've got work groups, on sex addiction. There's so many resources, and I'm concerned that you will be doing a minimal amount, just trying to put a patch on these issues right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wonder how you can look. You have all these addictions. That means you have a lot of emotional challenges. And one of the big emotional challenges that we turn on ourselves, so this undue focus on your own misery. I mean, I don't know what's going on. Are you depressed? Do you have other shame, consistent shame, even though you're working on yourself, may be a form of depression. Being a good liar means you were a good addict. You have to be a good liar to be a good addict. So here's what 2 things I would give you. One is the promises. If you read the promises of the 12-step
Mhm.
program, it's one of the most meaningful things I ever read. The only few times I cry in meetings is when I read the promises, because it tells me that there is hope for change, and
Mhm.
that I can move from shame to grace. And I really believe that. I mean, I think part of what Tammy and I truly believe is that people can heal, and hope is
Mhm.
possible, and relationships can
Mhm.
change. And I'm really glad that you are working on yourself. So the promises is one thing. And the other thing was, I'm just going to touch on this. Maybe shame is a character defect. Maybe
Mhm.
shame and going to self-hatred when you're not paying attention, when you just keep going back to you, maybe that's something you should look at. What am I not looking at? What am I not, as I'm attacking myself? What am I not seeing? Again, this another piece of program, since you brought it up, is service. I cannot feel shame and to help other people at the same time. So I would ask you, rather than 4 and 5, what is your 10th step? What are you doing? What is your 11th? I'm sorry, service. Now I lost my head. 12?
12th is service. Yeah.
Right,
So having had a spiritual awakening. Yeah. So
right.
anyway,
So what
so
are you
as
what are
the
you
result of
doing
these steps. Yeah.
to reach out and help others, so that you may not feel good about your relationship for a long time, but you can feel good about helping a newcomer. You're not bad, you're broken. And I know that because you want to get better and you're working so hard. I do think, and I agree with Tammy, that with multiple addictions and all of this, I mean, these are issues that really are best handled in treatment. And by the way, I want to say something else in general about addiction, sex addiction. It is not unusual for me to hear about scams. By the time people enter the center, I hear this a lot, especially
Yeah.
people who have means. It's like, well, this person said they needed this and they said they needed that. Or when I was having sex with them, they told me this, or, and before I know it,
Blackmail.
because we want to feel so special. We want to feel like the most important one. And so we will do whatever it takes to keep that illusion up. And if that means we're giving you things and doing things for you, well, we just feel like we're being a good person. But what we're really doing is trying to get the focus of you on us. So um, I do wonder if there's a financial amends that you can make, and I don't know what that means. Some of us spend our kids' college funds. Some of us spend money we could have been tithing. Some of us spend money a spouse could have used for a whole bunch of other things. So one of the things I'd be looking at is, how can I put that money back? You stole it. How can you return it to your family?
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, forgetting is a big problem in my relationship. I forget things that are important to my wife, and she sees this as a sign I'm disconnecting, like I did in addiction. I have good runs and we get close, but then I mess up. I can understand her frustration, and it's frustrating for me, like I'm sabotaging. Is this common in addiction?
Let me just say, in 30 years of doing this work and doing a lot of writing and thinking, I really don't believe in the concept of self-sabotage. I think there are things that we do that undermine us. For example, when you start to get close, do you feel frightened and do you run away, or do you do things that push your partner away? That's not self-sabotage, that's fear of intimacy. There are many ways to look at why we set ourselves up for these kinds of situations. I don't like the idea of self-sabotage, because it feels like you're never going to win. You're never going to get it right. You're never going to grow past that. You're always going to be disappointing people. You can be a better person and you can do this right. So, and by the way, I would start sitting down and talking about, well, here's a way to think about it as a therapist. Before you mess up, what's going on? What's going on between the two of you? Can you notice, you mess up at when her mother comes over? Do you mess up when the two of you are fighting? Do you mess up, some of us, and I know some guys in treatment right now, can be very passive aggressive. And what that means is that I do things to undermine us and leave you furious and upset. And then I just say, oh, well, I'm self-sabotaging. It's just my addiction. No, you actually did things to undermine this situation purposely, unconsciously, but purposely, because you wanted to piss them off. There's no better way of getting, how do I say this? There's no better way of looking sane and making my partner crazy than by telling them things and just not doing them, or saying I never said this, gaslighting. Because then spouses yell and get mad and look crazy, and we sit back and say, gosh, I don't know what the big deal is, I just messed up a little bit. So I would own and look at the patterns of this. And this is also a very good therapy issue. But self-sabotage, my question would be, why is it that you have challenges with whatever you're facing, and how can you take those challenges out of the way? I don't think any of us have a desire to sabotage ourselves in our lives. I think there are other issues going on. That's an easy, by the way, there's no terminology in psychiatry, in addiction, in any of our books that say the word self-sabotage. It's a pop culture concept. It doesn't really exist in therapy world.
Yeah, so yeah, I've got lots of thoughts going on in my head with this. It's like, so one of the things I was wondering is she clearly communicating this is important to me? Like I don't take anything for granted. If something is important to me, I will tell my husband, this is important. You know, I need you to hear me with this. If he needs to write a note, whatever. If it's somebody's telling me something, I'm writing a note. I'm doing what I need to do. So I'm kind of wondering, uh, I think it's really easy to go, it's important to me, they should know. But if I'm not clearly communicating it, like I'm setting it up, it's almost like this test that's going to get failed, you know? So I would, is there another way you can do that? And maybe you say to your spouse, you know, I want to continue to learn and grow. If something is important to me, can you make sure that you are communicating, this is important to me, and that I say it back to you so that I mean, whatever it is that you need to do, and then you do whatever it is, put it on your calendar 16 times, whatever you need to do to make sure that, you know, you're owning that. But I have a feeling that just, you know, starting to take that step towards it might help you remember, first of all, but it might also help you know what is going to be important that you you know, are taking greater care with.
And I want to just sort of go under what Tammy said, which is um, sometimes it's not the specific thing. Sometimes it's like your spouse asks with 100 different things what they want and or what they need or whatever that is, and it's really all the same request, but it's something that
Mm.
we struggle with, and at some point we're going to let them down here, but it isn't that. It's the bigger issue of, I don't know, I feel overwhelmed, or I feel dependent on, or I feel whatever it is, and we might push them away. Is there a commonality to her requests of you, and what is the need underneath that? She needs to feel heard, she needs to feel safe, she needs to feel understood. What is the meaning of those disappointments rather than just that specific thing? Although Tammy's right, write those specific things down and try not to screw it up.
Yeah, no, but I love that, you know, like, and looking at the patterns, because I bet, like you're saying, that there's a pattern to, you know, like this need maybe where I, you know, mess up, so to speak, you know, more
Right.
often. Okay, well, that's good. It's all information, you know. We're human. We're always going to mess up. We are always going to mess up, you know, but how we approach it, how we own it is, you know, is where we can make some progress. So,
And here's one
okay.
more piece of that. Maybe you're
Hmm.
angry at her. Maybe there's something
Oh,
going on that you have not expressed or don't know how to express. And so this is your way of saying, I'm going to let you down. I'm going to disappoint you because I am so frustrated. And I know exactly what you want, and I'm not going to give it to you. Again, passive aggressive, a way to make that person. And then you say back on, I don't know why. I don't know why I keep ruining things. Well, maybe there's a reason. And that's also something I might look at, is what is my motivation to keep pushing us apart? And of course, these things aren't always conscious. That's what we're for.
yeah, that's absolutely true. So, okay. What about the abuse that the betrayed partner endures due to the addiction? The concept of fraud, sex becomes rape.
I'm not sure I know what the question is. It sounds like a
I think
statement.
yeah, no, I think this is one of those. There's a line of thinking where the addicts are abusers and
Right.
perpetrators, and so then sex with somebody who's an abuser is now deemed rape. Um,
Right.
so okay,
So I'm going to say something about that. I have been in this field 30
please.
years. And for many years, we were only focused on addicts, and we didn't understand what partners went through. We put all of our focus on the addicts and very little on the partners. Then we began to understand about 15 years ago what partner, or 12, what partners needed. And we became very focused on this idea of betrayal, trauma, and what you go through, and having more empathy and compassion. But now I believe, and I think Tammy might agree, that there are places in my world, professionals and people who have certain viewpoints, where we're not just addicts, and we're not just broken people, we are bad people, and we are going to rape and pillage and murder, and we are sort of criminals and that our behavior borders on criminality, and we maybe have sociopathy, and I just don't believe all that. I mean, I'm a recovering addict. I live a good life. I help people. My brain says do that, and I question it. Maybe I do this, and I certainly make mistakes. But believe me, having had sex with 1,000 people, and by the way, that's a 1K when I was younger, I am a full-on sex addict, and I know how to make my own life miserable and certainly hurt other people, but I don't do that anymore. And I'm not a sociopath. And I guess I'm taking this a little personally, I think, Tammy, because this whole movement, which is spouse driven, about we are incredible victims of your sociopathy and you are a perpetrator, and all of that stuff, I think is over the top. And I think we have gone from, and I want 6 polygraphs and I want to know every single thing. And that's not how you're going to grow a relationship. That's not how you're going to heal things. You may feel a lot of entitlement and a lot of, well, they get what they deserve, but how does that really drive things forward if they just become the bad person? And by the way, partners have issues too. I'm not saying it's direct as this, but if you put all of your energy on that person being the bad person, you are not looking at yourself. And both people in a coupleship, no matter how much pain, need to look at themselves. So I have a few, Tammy, I have to work through my resentments about my field being turned into this kind of all spouses are victims and all addicts are these cruel, terrible people, because it just isn't like that. And if you think it's like that, then don't sit around places like this, because it doesn't give hope for change. And Tammy and I are all about hope for change, or we wouldn't sit here. We've seen change. We know what it tastes like. What is that? I have to say, what did that woman say I love about treatment with her husband? She said, "You left my husband there, remember?"
She emailed, and I love this. She was like, I don't know who you sent me, but I'm keeping him. You can keep the guy I sent to you. I like this guy much better. And I was like, it was like what I was saying earlier. It's like, I love it when I hear from partners and spouses that they see the change. That's what we go for. And yeah, this mentality of, and it is very, you're the abuser and I'm the victim. And it doesn't create a space for healing the relationship or really healing either one of them, because, if in brokenness, do addicts do horrible things that are hurtful to themselves and to everyone else? Absolutely. But to make it be like it's an intentional abuse and they chose to do all of this, and I'm completely the victim of this, and there's no place or empowerment for a victim. I mean, they're stuck, and that's a horrible thing to think of, that they're forever stuck as a victim, of somebody else's brokenness.
Well, I'll take it to another level, which is, why would you want to be a spouse who's been living with a sadistic sociopath? Did you really just not see that at all? Or is it that they have a problem with certain behaviors, but in other arenas, they're a reasonable human being? Our addictions are not global. It's not everything we are. It's a part of how we're broken. And if you're looking for anyone to say that your spouse is a bad person, this isn't the right train to be on.
Yeah. So she continued, but I don't think any answer. Do you want me to read it, or do we need to go?
No, it's just, you want to take one more question?
Okay. Why would we be victim blame, or why would you be victim blaming in regards to spousal rape? If someone doesn't tell you the true self, that doesn't allow the partner to make the safest choice they need to make.
I'm not exactly sure what you said, but all I can say is no one can predict the future. I think and you don't know when you fall in love with someone and begin to grow a relationship, how things are going to land. I want Tammy to say one more thing about that, because I'm not sure I got it right, but I do want to correct something to be clear. Spouses, you are victimized. You have been victimized by our addiction. We are unreliable, cruel, disappointing, and hurtful people when we are in our addiction. But you can work your way out of victimization into grace, and we can work our way out of all of this mess we've created within ourselves to heal. We're not saying that these aren't bad things and that bad things don't happen and people aren't deeply hurt. I hope you know that from my work already. But I will say to you that the idea that this is unredeemable doesn't give hope for either one of you, to be honest with you. If you're picking sociopaths who are going to victimize you all the time, your next relationship probably isn't going to be a great deal. So anyway, Tammy, is there anything you want to add to that? I don't mean to get so agitated.
No,
I love you spouses, but there is
I
this
do too. Yeah,
over the top thing that's happening.
Yeah. Well, and I hear, the language of abuse, and it creates more hurt, and it takes away the hope, but it creates more of a disconnect, because it's always the focus on the past of like, you did this and I'm this, rather than, okay, it's been bad and we're working through it and how do we move forward. And I think that's part of it too, is it gets so stuck in, you're my rapist, and you're my abuser. It's just it's defeating to me. So, but everybody gets to choose. So if that's the path that you choose, like, everybody gets to choose. We're here.
Do you know what makes me mad,
working on
Tammy?
hope. What?
I have trained all of those therapists. I've trained almost every one of them. And now they've turned around and they've reached their own conclusions about the work, and everyone has a viewpoint.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to pass over time. I think it's going to pass.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Oh, don't forget.
What?
Don't forget. So in a week from tomorrow, on the 13th of June, A&E is presenting the beginning of what they call digital addiction. And it's a series that a number of us have been involved with. And you're going to hear people's stories about porn addiction and gambling and gaming and spending and all that stuff that goes on online, which is the 21st century of addiction work. And so I do invite you, not only when I'm on next Tuesday on A&E, but also whenever the show airs, to really take a look at what people are going through related to problem behaviors online, and not just substances, as they did with intervention. These are the same folks who created intervention, so, which Tammy loves. She's watched lots of episodes.
I have watched lots of episodes, so yes. I don't watch it in a compulsive way. Yeah, no. Well, sometimes I'm rooting for the person going, oh, please pick, and you don't know how it's going to end. So, but we don't know how any of this is going to end. All we know is today we're working on recovery, so it's all good. So thank you, Dr. Rob. Thanks, everybody.
See y'all soon.